Welcome to the official launch of the USNC Young and Emerging Professionals Program. We will begin as soon as everyone has made their way into the virtual meeting room and taken their seats. As a reminder, this event is being recorded. If you are not a speaker, please keep your microphones off and audio muted on Zoom. For our online participants, you may submit questions or comments at any time via the chat. The chat will be monitored throughout the meeting by our staff. Please use the raised hand icon in the Zoom toolbar to let us know you would like to speak. When called upon, unmute your audio. You may also turn on your camera to be shown on screen in the meeting room. If you do not wish to be seen, please leave your video off. For those participants in the room, please hit the push to talk button on your microphone and speak clearly in the mic so that everyone online can hear clearly. Whether you are joining us in person or connecting virtually, we will do our best to make certain the experience is positive for every attendee. Please give us your feedback in real time. If you can't hear or see something, let us know. Now, let's get started.
Thank you and welcome everybody. We're so pleased to have you all gathered here today, both virtually and in person. My name is Carrie Schmaus. I'm from the U.S. Department of Energy, but today I'll be representing my role as YEP Committee Chair. I'm joined by Carolyn Hull from the Medical Imaging and Technology Alliance, MITA, and Wally Zoller from Rockwell Automation. And I'll let you both introduce yourselves as you get started with your presentations.
Thanks, Carrie. I'm Carolyn Hall, and I'm the DICOM General Secretary with MITA, and we're also part of the National Electrical Manufacturers Association. And I was a young professional in 2019 in Shanghai.
And I'm Wally Zoller. I was a young professional in 2018 in Vladivostok, Russia. I am now heavily involved in the IEC and the ISO. I'm the Secretary of the Systems Committee for Smart Manufacturing, the Secretary for 65B, which is Measurement and Control Devices. In the USNC, I'm on the Technical Management Committee, the Communications Committee, the Young Professionals Committee, and I'm involved in the mentoring program. So I think I'm good evidence that once they hook you, they do not let you go. But this is your entree into the program, and yeah, I welcome everyone, and I hope that you will get as involved as I have over the years.
Thanks, Wally and Carolyn, and thank you both for being here today. So we just want to start by saying welcome. This is our first USNC YEP hybrid event. So we have folks joining us online and here in person, and it's so nice to see everybody here together. So I'm really looking forward to our discussion. And I just want to note, this is a long time coming. We've been working, I should have done the math before. I think it's been 2 years now, 2 to 3 years now on this program. And so to be able to have a discussion today, both in person and online, is really exciting. And I'm excited to see how the hybrid event work goes, because at least for me, it's the first time doing it this way. So lots of firsts today and lots of looking forward to the future. Today, we are going to spend about 40 minutes on a presentation and a Q&A just to get everybody caught up with what the YEP program has been up to. And then we'll move into a facilitated feedback session where we have 3 questions that we'll be asking for responses from both folks online and in person. Then, of course, we'll take a break, and then we'll move into our working session, which we'll have a working session in person, and then there will be a separate one online, but we'll come back together as a full group and share what both groups talked through during both of those sessions. After that, we'll move to a reception for the folks in person, and then I invite people online to get their favorite drink and relax a little bit. In terms of the presentation today, we'll start out, of course, with the welcome, which is what we're doing right now. And then we'll move into an overview of the National YEP program, including some National YEP program history, short as it may be. Then we'll go into some current efforts in the National YEP program, go through some events that are coming up. Here's some testimonials from some folks that weren't able to join us in person, but were able to record some videos for us. And then we'll look a little bit to the future and end with a Q&A. All right, Carolyn, over to you.
Great. So who is a young and emerging professional? So This committee is focusing on advancement of professionals who are just beginning or early in their standards or conformity assessment careers. And I think technically, we said of young professionals, anyone with fewer than 8 years of experience in conformity or assessment or standards. And participants can be employed by industry, as a few of us are, government, as Carrie is, academic bodies, consumer organizations, or anyone else in the standards or conformity assessment community, which we know affects a really wide range of organizations. And so what were our goals when we set out to establish this YEP program? First, we wanted to increase outreach to a diverse group of YEPs. We wanted to make sure that the YEPs were connecting with each other in the standards and conformity assessment area, getting to know each other and building relationships, and helping them to in turn engage their companies in activities, which helps the companies as well get more exposure and visibility. And then also provide mentorship to each other, to connections within the USNC, share knowledge and skills, and then also facilitate connections between US and international YEPs, which we started with a regional program in the Americas. Hand it over to Wally.
Great, thanks. So when we decided to formalize this program, it took some serious thought, because while the US has always provided strong young professionals to the program, one, it was sort of based on the community you were already involved in. And two, we didn't know how to capture people and continue their careers in standards conformity assessment formally afterwards. So establishing and formalizing this program was really important to us. So first, we looked to inspiration from other countries and their national committee programs. We had multiple, I'm going to call them unilateral or bilateral meetings with other countries and other organizations. Very informal talks, but what works, what doesn't work, what engages, and what keeps people around, and what is considered a reward rather than an extra burden on your work. And we got a lot of good communication and a lot of good advice about how to make sure we keep people engaged with the program afterwards. So we did have some strategic initiatives identified. We wanted to look at the challenges and possible solutions, and especially we indicate the value proposition. So that's something that I deal with internally at my organization, certainly, which is, how do we convince people to spend money on travel, to give some of their valuable bandwidth to these type of programs, and what value they're going to extract out of that. I can only speak for myself personally when I say it has made my career. I'll say that very candidly. I encourage all of you to get involved in it. It is an invaluable pathway to getting involved in the standards and conformity assessment community. And then even if your career deviates, you will have a network that you cannot believe. And so our mission was to establish this community of future standards and conformity assessment professionals in the United States, and keep it running and keep people engaged, and move forward with this next generation of professionals. And so when I talk about the value of participation, these are just sort of the major hits that have impacted me. First is the community building. The United States National Committee is wonderful and welcoming and open. I have never been for want of a mentor or someone off whom I can bounce questions or just ask. And I mean, not from my company or not even from ANSI or the USNC, but from competitors. People are open and willing to talk to you. That open exchange of ideas will help you develop yourself personally and professionally. And there's no way to replace that. And this is an opportunity for all of you to do that. The networking and mentorship opportunities, like I said, is just a question away. If you need assistance, If you're having challenges with your career, if you're having challenges getting your boss or your organization to sponsor you for this type of activity, you need only ask, and the support is out there, whether it's formally through the USNC or ANSI or through letters of recommendation or sponsorship. There are opportunities out there to learn. And then the exposure to the cross-functional areas is what really excited me. I work in manufacturing in that industry. And through the IEC and through the Young Professionals Program, which exposed me to all these extra participants, I was able to identify ancillary with direct or indirect impacts on the work that I'm doing. And you will not realize exactly how much work is going on in your field or things that might touch your field unless you're part of a part of this community. And going around and asking and talking to experts in their fields who are open and willing to discuss their work is extraordinarily valuable. And as a young professional, you will have immediate and open access to those experts, and it's tremendously important.
So what have we been putting into practice in the YEP? Currently, we created 4 task forces that were to establish and address and support our goals and strategic objectives. So first one, as we mentioned before, diversity, equity, and inclusion is very important to us. So we have a task force working on that. International collaboration, outreach, recruitment, and programming and events. And so we've been alternating the monthly larger committee meetings and task force meetings over the past few years. And we thank USNC for all of their administrative and otherwise support for the program. They've been great partners with us. And another thing we've done is develop a YEP webpage, which has a lot of great information for new YEPs or less new YEPs. The URLs on the slide there. And we also have opportunities to contribute to the USNC Current, which is a great opportunity to get some writing experience in, get your name and information out in the USNC Current.
Thanks, Wally and Carolyn. Now I'll just go through some of the really exciting upcoming events we have. The biggest one is one that you've hopefully heard of. The US is hosting the IEC General Meeting in San Francisco this year, and that will be taking place towards the end of October and into November. And as part of that is the 2022 IEC Young Professionals Workshop. And so this is the international workshop that young professionals from across the world come together for 5 days and go through a series of activities. You can find more information on the website, or you can reach out to USNC staff Ade Gladstein for that. But I do want to bring special attention that the Young Professionals Competition, which is the process you would go through to attend the IEC YP workshop in San Francisco this year, the applications are due in just under a month. They're due June 15th. So if that's something of interest, please do visit our website that Carolyn mentioned. It's linked on the previous slide, and check it out because it's an awesome program. And at least for me, it was really how I got my start working on standards and conformity assessment. So again, if you're interested in that, applications are due on June 15th, and we hope to see some of you there.
Carrie, do you mind if I
Please.
just make a comment on that
Yeah.
real quick? So even if you think you are unprepared or not ready, I would encourage you to fill out that application and apply anyways. So first of all, if you want any help or advice on how to create a successful application, please contact any of us or any one of the from the USNC staff. I'm happy to give advice on what worked and what didn't work for me. I was lucky enough. I was young professional long enough. I didn't have to make the video, which I know is part of it now. So I don't know how much advice I can give on that, but I can certainly help with the application. And I'll be honest, I was not chosen the first time around. And I went back, I looked at how I was presenting myself professionally and what gaps existed, and was selected on the second round. And so, like I said, even if you don't think you're prepared or you don't think you're ready, I encourage you to go through that process of filling out the application, just for the experience of it.
I also wasn't chosen on my first time, so try again.
Thanks. I'll just add one more thing about that. If this is kind of the first or second time you've heard about standards, this is really the program for you. That was me when I did it a couple of years ago. And now look, what can happen. So it's really a fabulous opportunity. And like Wally said, any of us are happy to talk about what the program was like and how to be successful in your application. So please do reach out. Speaking of the program, we are so lucky to have 2 videos from 2 people that attended last year, which was actually a virtual experience. Chris Schmid and Stephanie Schiller, thank you so much for putting these videos together. And I'll virtually turn it over to you 2.
Hi, my name is Chris Schmid from UL Standards and Engagement. I was selected as one of the US representatives to attend the IEC Young Professionals Program in 2021. This was the first year the program was held in a hybrid format, and due to the restrictions of the time, I attended the workshop virtually. This created a unique experience and challenges not seen in previous years. The hardest of which for myself was the program beginning at 2 a.m. in my local time zone of Eastern Standard Time. Thankfully, the time change was a challenge that I was able to share with other young professionals representing their regions virtually as well. After reflecting on the program, I can say it was a rewarding experience, and I'm sure any future representatives would say the same as well. As an addition to my attendance, I also joined the USNC YEP committee. The committee has benefited my career by opening the door to various technical committees, of which I recently joined the US tag for IEC TC64. Overall, I would say one of the biggest challenges I've found with getting involved in the standardization committee is simply getting started. I see the YEP committee as a great solution to this issue and would recommend any aspiring young professionals looking to get involved in the standardization community to join the YEP committee as well. Thank you, and I hope you enjoy the rest of World Standards Week.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Schiller, and I had the distinct pleasure to be selected as one of the U.S. National Committee's IEC Young Professionals of 2021. Through this selection, I was invited into the YEP committee and participate in the IEC's 85th General Meeting, which was held in Dubai last year. This meeting was the IEC's first meeting in a hybrid setting for both in-person and remote attendees. I had participated in the meeting remotely and was very impressed at the outcome and preparedness of the activities and involvement of the YPs. For the young professionals in the meeting, it was about half in person and half remote. While meeting and collaborating in person would have been preferred, I do think that the efforts put into the hybrid meeting were reflected, and I did not feel as if I missed any opportunities. At the global capacity the IEC plays, the success of this shows that there can still be involvement and engagement in such a setting. I was still able to connect and chat with peers who were on site and also remote like me. Just as if you were present at the meeting, it's all about making the initiative and reaching out to make those connections. After the general meeting last year in October, I participated in the YEP committee for the USNC and maintain my connections from the general meeting, which I look forward to hopefully meeting at this year's general meeting in San Francisco, as well as new connections and conversations. As part of the YEP committee and IEC, I hope to help drive more movement on the conformity assessment pillar of IEC. While working in conformity assessment, participating in the YEP committee has connected me to more like-minded people and how we can grow that pool of knowledge. I hope to continue this path with the YEP committee and IEC to get more involved in the IEC's conformity assessment systems and awareness of conformity assessment globally.
Thanks again to both Chris and Stephanie for those wonderful videos. It's always so great to hear about everybody's experience at the YP program, especially in a rather unusual year where they were able to pull it off in a hybrid format. So thank you to you both for making those videos for us. I did want to take a moment just to mention an upcoming opportunity. The USNC mentoring program will be opening applications this summer to participate in the program, both as a mentee and as a protege and a mentor. I had the wrong name there. And so I encourage folks that are interested in that, reach out to our staff member, Megan Paul, with any questions. This was a very successful program. They actually just finished up their first round after doing a pilot program the year previous. And so I really encourage people to reach out with any questions and take a look on our website to learn more about the USNC mentoring program.
Can I add to the
Yeah,
mentoring
of
program
course.
as well?
Yeah.
Sorry, I just keep
I love it,
interjecting.
do it, yeah.
But so I was part of the pilot program for the mentoring program as both a protege and a mentor. And I'm still part of the program now. And in fact, you were right. We have wrapped up our first round, but my protege and I are still very much in contact. He and I come from different industries. And so, I'll be frank, we both learn from each other. I learned the type of challenges that exist for entering into the IEC program or for getting involved in technical committees. I also learned a lot about his industry, which is wind energy. And it was just a really good opportunity to establish a relationship with someone I would not have otherwise met. I think it's a really valuable program. And you'll also likely be connected with someone, if you decide to go in as a protege, you'll be connected with someone as a mentor who knows the path towards leadership in the USNC, the IEC, or beyond, depending on what level of involvement you want to pursue. There's so much advice out there that is, I'll say unfortunately for now, is tribal knowledge that can be and should be downloaded into our next generation of participants. And this is a great opportunity to do that. So.
Yeah, thank you, Wally. Absolutely. Finally, we're going to wrap up with one final testimonial from Sam Lum. He's actually the secretary of the U.S. National Committee YEP program, but he was on vacation right now, and so but he really wanted to participate, and so I invited him to make a video, and so we'll go over to that now. Thanks, Sam.
The YEPCOM is an amazing group of people all committed to standardization. Being actively involved in standards can make a difference to your organization. Standards has been key, not just to technology development, but of economic competitiveness, tariffs and trade, national security, as well as being a neutral basis for international cooperation. I can attest to that as a staff member of FDA's Standards and Conformity Assessment Program, where we both recognize standards as an agency and also utilize standards in supporting our pre-market review of medical devices. It is truly a privilege to serve as secretary because it's such an important time for young and emerging professionals in the United States and around the world to be involved in the advancement of equity, science, and technology through standard development. One of the topics that we need to navigate is that of hybrid participation. Though we continue to work remotely, we cannot lose sight and the priority of staying abreast of standards work. If anything, it allows us to be even more flexible and to be more fully involved together. This enables us to work with different people anytime and anywhere, just like with our fellow young professional programs across the world, allowing us to engage in international dialogues. Under the pragmatic leadership of Carrie and Eric, my fellow colleagues, and with the support of ANSI and USNC, the National YEP program is positioned to be successful in capacity building for standards and conformity assessment activities. So I really encourage everyone watching to think critically about how to get involved or support this unique and important effort in developing the next generation of electrotechnical standards professionals. Thank you.
Thanks again to Sam for that wonderful video. Now we'll be moving into the question and answer section. We've got about 10 minutes for this. And so in person, Wally has kindly been voluntold maybe to be the facilitator. And then online, we have Megan and Ade. So if you're in person, please just raise your hand. Remember to note who you are and ask your question. And then if you're online, you can virtually raise your hand and you'll be able to do the same thing.
Yeah, great. So to kick things off, and in the spirit of being voluntold, I'll ask Mr. Lippert to ask a question, if you don't mind.
So my name is Kevin Lippert. I'm with Underwriters Laboratories. I have over 35 years of experience in the electrical industry. So I would guess that you'd say that I'm not a young professional, but I am the president of the United States National Committee, and I'm really excited about a program like this. So we have a lot of the aging standards folks who are coming to that point in their careers where they're starting to hang it up, and to see the young people get involved, I think is very encouraging. In addition, I think the question that I think is critical for every YEP to ask themselves is to, once they ask some questions about the program and understand what's involved with standards, what's involved with conformity assessment and everything, you have to ask yourself, what does this mean to me and what are my career aspirations? And I think when you do that, I think you'll find out that there's a lot more involvement for you personally and for your companies. So that in my day, it was a matter of, I grew up in it and I inherited from some of my predecessors. But today, I think it's a matter of you investigating, because you all own your careers now. And you own your careers much more than I'd say my generation did. Again, I stayed 35 years with a company. You don't hear that today. But I think you have to ask yourself, what's in it to grow your career? So with that said, you want me to ask a question, a specific question. So my question is for those who have been involved and know what initially set you into attending today. What was the one thing that brought you here today? Or if you have been in for a while, what was your first initial thing that got you involved? Clear question?
Great question. I'll start. You guys don't mind? We'll just go down the line. What got me involved was baptism by fire. So I had a boss who sort of introduced me to the work and assigned me as an assistant secretary to a subcommittee immediately. And doing that work from the office was certainly possible, but it felt very clerical or administrative in nature. And I wanted to delve further into what the results of all this work really was, right? I wanted to see what the impact of all my typing and form filling and really was. And when I applied for and was eventually accepted into the young professionals community, I realized just how impactful the work I'm doing was. And so now in my office, I proudly sit with every sample published standard from the IEC right behind my desk to remind me just how much work I've done and how much it matters, not just to my industry, but to technology writ large.
What an excellent question, Kevin. I think for me, it's a little bit different. This was all sort of a volunteer effort on my part, that I'm here because I'm interested and I care about this. And that really started when I attended a standards meeting somewhat on a whim. And I heard from the folks in the room about, and I work in marine renewable energy, which is a very nascent technology. It's really new. We're still kind of trying to figure it out. And hearing from folks working on standards in the room, I came to understand that building a solid foundation through standards and conformity assessment is really the path to a commercialized, successful industry. And so a lot of my involvement with standards really came from the fact that I really want to see marine renewable energy take off and be just as useful in terms of green electrons as wind energy one day. And I think standards is a way to do that. And so hearing that and kind of understanding, the role standards has to play in commercializing a nascent industry was really what got me interested. And then I just started talking to people. And so fortunately, another very well-known name, I would say, Jonathan Colby, is also in the marine energy industry. And just talking to him about his experience with the young professionals work and getting involved in the IEC, I found that this was something I really cared about. And even though I have the nickname of standards nerd in my office, because I talk about it so much, I wear that nickname proudly and have just continued to become more and more involved. And I found that if you keep showing up and you keep being excited and you keep asking questions and talking to people, you can find a role for yourself. So that's kind of how it started for me.
Yeah, for me, it was, I'd say, entirely by accident. So I had heard of ISO a little bit before I started my job, but I was graduating from grad school and I knew I loved healthcare. And so I applied for this job that was global regulatory. And I also am really love working on international issues and with people from all over the world. I really like that. And then this job also had a standards component. And so a colleague forwarded me the application for the YP program, and a colleague of mine had done it a few years prior, and I applied and here I am. But yeah, I learned all about how important standards are for patient safety, for health. And, every time you get an X-ray or an MRI or some other type of medical imaging that has thousands of standards attached to it, those devices. So yeah, it was accidentally, but again, now I'm in, and now I know all about all the field can offer.
And from the virtual end, I see that Eric Franca has raised his hand.
Hey, everybody. I'm Eric Franca. I'm Vice Chair of the YEPCOM. I come from the FDA, so to chime in, I didn't want the panel members just getting grilled the whole time. I came to FDA out of academia, so I had no idea really what a standard was coming into it. And I started my life there as a lead reviewer for neurological medical devices. So that touches on like a lot of IEC standards like 60601-1. So I kind of got an introduction there. And then to be perfectly honest, being able to develop standards, I think it's specifically exoskeleton standards, was a little bit of a reprieve from my daily work as a lead reviewer, which I don't know if you know many folks at FDA in the device review area, but it can be a bit of a grind where you're just getting a lot of reviews all at once. And so for me, it was a real treat to be able to work on something that kind of helps shape the way reviews could be done in the future for specific devices. And through that, I found the YEP, applying for the YEP position as a young professional. I think for Busan, Korea, the year after Wally was a young professional, and that kind of springboarded me into wanting to do more in this space and become more involved. So that's what I've been up to.
And I'm not seeing any other hands or comments online at the moment.
Can I just make a closing comment, and it's Kevin? So from what I heard, it's pretty diverse as to how you got in. And for those who didn't comment and no one's being pushed, I would say that the opportunities are there for whatever reason to at least stick your toe in the water and see what it can do, not only for you and your employer and everything, but really, I think you have to ask yourself, what can it do for your future? And I think when you have that kind of sense as to where it's going for you long-term, it may help guide you along the way. So great responses, everyone, and I appreciate you sharing.
Okay, so we want to hear your thoughts. How does the US YEP program know when it's been successful?
Well, I'll just start it off while the people online steel up their bravery. The US YEP program will know it's been successful. And I mean this in the kindest way possible to these gentlemen here when you've all been replaced, right? When the Young and Emerging Professional Program has truly created the succession planning for the next generation of standard professionals, both in leadership and in participation. Was that too cold? So I mean, maybe I took it a step too far, and I wished ill on our current leadership, but no. I think establishing that succession program, that pipeline for these new people coming in, would truly be a successful mark for us, without pushing anyone out.
Okay, I'll give him a break here to think some more. There's others. And so Wally, we were just joking there, but I think it's successful by seeing you still here. You're here. You're engaged. You're involved. It wasn't a one-time thing. Hey, I got a trip to lovely Busan or wherever, Vladivostok, well, we won't go there. But anyways, it's encouraging to see the younger people get involved because again, when you look around, a lot of these, we have the gentrification issue. And you look around the room and you say, who is going to be here in 5 years? Who's going to be here in 10 years? So I think the measure of success is seeing the younger people and at the meetings and sticking with it rather than just the one and done. To me, that's a good form of success. And you hear different generations saying, "Oh, the next generation is just going to ruin the world." My grandfather said that to my father. My father said it to me. I said it to my daughter and everything. And I have no fears of that for the next generation. From what I've seen, it's going to be different. And you bring the differences and you make them work and you've helped some of us in my generation adapt to some of the things that we needed and we needed to be pushed a little bit to adapt to. So from that, I mean, these are all measures of all of our success.
And I think that's a really, the beginning part of your answer, it's a great segue into the diversity initiatives of the YP program, if you want to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, excellent point. Thanks, Wally. When we started this program, one of the kind of core tenets we had was diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI. And I think that is going to be sort of a moving target, a goal that if we do it right, we probably never fully get because as soon as we hit one milestone, we know that there's something else that we can improve. And so just getting started, we've only been, this is our first official launch of the program. So we haven't been working on this for too long in the grand scheme of how long it will be around. And we're starting out by just trying to get an understanding of who we have in the room. And I mean that from any kind of measure possible, discipline, industry, gender, et cetera, understanding who we have and then understanding where our gaps are. And by doing that, we can target our outreach and engage new people that we don't have represented around our table yet, and hopefully come out the other end with a diverse group that can bring different perspectives from different industries and different, walks of life and help us understand how to really engage all kinds of different people across all the different places they come from and have a program at the end that really represents everybody, just like the IEC does. And so right now, we're still kind of in the information gathering stage. One of the things we'll be looking towards today is during our working session is what do we want the future to hold? I think having that core tenet of DEI kind of guide us in what our future actions will be is really going to be important when thinking about what the future will look like. And so my call to action with that is if anyone has any thoughts on how to achieve these goals, how to engage new people, and how to make our virtual or hybrid table reflect the people that we're hoping to serve, what does that look like? And we're really open to any ideas that are out there in the world.
Hi, Steve Margus, UL, IEC Chair. One thing I want to say as far as what does a successful program look like? Well, first of all, it's up to all of you to identify what success looks like to you. But for this kind of question, to me, what success looks like is when the YEP program, instead of being the Young and Emerging Professionals program, becomes the USNC Professionals program. And what I mean by that is that everyone's journey is different. The maturity level and curve that everyone goes through, some go at different paces. But what I can successfully say is that there are a number of people who have gone through the YEP program, in my experience since its beginning, that I now consider colleagues and friends. And I hope they do the same. I think there's a lot of people that are us senior emerged professionals that hopefully are here to listen to you. We're hopefully here to be a network for you. But I can tell you that we all learn from each other. Wally gave an example of a mentoring program where even as a mentor or, you know, whatever side of the fence you live on, you have a different perspective, you have different skills you bring to the table. And at the end of the day, that sharing is where this really helps us. So a future state YEP program in my mind is basically a maturity curve. And at the beginning of that maturity curve, we're onboarding and on-ramping people who are new to our community, whatever age, whatever background, whatever experience they have. And as we bring them in and we kind of bring them into the community and get them comfortable, hopefully they become active contributors in that circle. And again, each will have their own thing to bring. Once they get to that level of comfort, the learning always continues. I've been 30 plus years in conformity assessment. And I will say that I don't think my learning journey ever ends. I hope it never ends because there's always more to learn. There's always new technologies. And there will always be someone in that continuum that I need to rely on, regardless of if it's a young professional in a new technology or just someone bringing in new energy and ideas, all the way to people that understand why some of those ideas may or may not work because of their experience. So to me, there should always be an on-ramp for people. Once people hit that on-ramp, we have to create a way to indoctrinate them, to get them comfortable, to get them working and active and communicating. And once they get to that level of comfort where the alphabet soup becomes language, then our open conversations when we speak to each other, you are no longer at that point a young and emerging professional. And the panelists that we have here today running the YEP program, I consider to be professionals. I don't want to label them as young and emerging professionals. They're professionals. And so somewhere in that curve where we can say we're just community of professionals that are sharing and learning from each other, that's where the magic happens. And I guess I'll close by saying, just remember that that magic that's happening isn't just happening to you. It's happening to everyone that's in that conversation, if they're open to it, if they're active, if they're contributing and they're willing to say, I have more to learn. So from my perspective, that's kind of a future state situation where hopefully we get to a point where we create opportunities, we lose labels, and by losing those labels, we become people who help each other. And I've seen success with that with a number of people and look forward to seeing it continue in the future. Thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you, Steve. I just wrote down create opportunities and lose labels because I really like that attitude. You know, how do we get people engaged and how do we get them up to speed? But then how do we get them, you know, so they can kind of fly out of the nest and function as a true, fully fledged professional while always knowing that that community will be there to support them. So I think that's a really nice framing. So we'll move on to our second question, which is, what is the role of international collaboration for the National YEP program?
Ade, are there any hands up online?
I'm not seeing any hands or comments for the second question. So our folks online, don't be shy. Oh, I see Samuel Lum just raised his hand. Sam?
Hi, thanks everyone. I am in Greece right now, stuck in quarantine. But in any case, so I think this has been a great session so far. In terms of international collaboration, it's something I'm looking to be more involved with in the committee. But then at the FDA where I work, you know, one of the biggest things is regulatory. So how do we continue to bring about regulatory harmonization? And it's really key in the idea that all these global companies, all the medical companies out there, for example, they want to have clear requirements across those borders. And the more we can continue to engage with them, because we only have such a limited team that work in international affairs at the agency for that. I think it'd be really interesting to get more young professionals involved in that, as we do, because it just, I think it bridges that gap between what some really specialized experts do and then what young professionals can suddenly have a conversation with and try to bridge. So I think it helps to have better transparency. It also helps to be closer to the people who are engineers in the field, people in the test lab, people in the, a lot more of the white collar workers doing the work as opposed to the people kind of maybe higher up there. And I think it helps to have that dialogue like we have at the general meeting and with the YEP to kind of start to break that gap to make it more fluid. I think that would be a wonderful conversation to have in terms of having, industry, government, all that happening all at the same time. So I think it could be a good platform for doing that.
Thanks, Sam. Yeah, and well, first of all, I thought you were supposed to be on vacation, so make sure you relax a little bit after this session is over. But what your point is very well taken. I think, especially when a lot of us are working in industries that are truly international industries. I know marine energy certainly is one of those. Having those international connections through the YEP program has really been helpful for just meeting folks kind of inside and outside your industry. And so as our world gets ever more globalized, I think, having this as a pathway to make those connections is certainly going to be very important. So thank you, Sam.
And I see another hand up from Eric Franca.
Hello. Yeah, and to piggyback on what Sam was saying and carry you there, I think it is important to facilitate just networking in general for our own professional purposes and standards development and stuff, but also as a means to see how the other national YEP programs are proceeding, to learn from each other. That can also be a helpful pathway for the national YEP program as we go forward, to see what other countries which may have a more seasoned national program are up to, and then potentially coordinating and collaborating down the road. Networking events and anything else we can think of that would be also a very useful task for the national program.
Thanks, Eric. Yeah, I really appreciate that contribution. I totally agree. So, I mean, I think going forward and when we move into our working session this afternoon, thinking about how, we can achieve those goals that we have with international collaboration and understanding what those inroads are and what kind of connections and programs and other exchanges have been mentioned in the past, what we can do to really build those connections, and then how can we make sure they're as most impactful as they possibly can be. So with that, I think we could move to our last question. So I'll turn it over to Carolyn.
So what are the main challenges that the standards and conformity assessment community is facing that the USNC YEP program can help to address?
Franca, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, I might as well. I mean, I think one of the big things that maybe I come from government where we engage a lot in standards, so it's a little easy. Like I've had a pretty easy road into standards and like getting funding for participation. But I think that's a pain point we commonly hear from a lot of younger professionals in this world, where it's kind of hard to get managerial buy-in, or, especially as we move into hybrid, like support to actually go and network and have a in-person effect on how standards are developed, or even, these conversations like that we're having now. So I think the YEP program can help address that I'm not precisely sure how, but we can certainly brainstorm on specific ideas that can help.
Thanks, Eric. Yeah, that is a nice foreshadow to one of our working sessions we have this afternoon. So keep that in mind. We'll start to brainstorm how the YEP committee and the YEP program can actually help address that challenge. Steve, did you have a contribution?
Thank you, Steve Margus, UL. Kind of two perspectives. I was sharing with Carrie recently about my early career at UL. And I would say one perspective I want to share is that there's a lot to be done outside the meetings. And I think that's the biggest oversight of the whole international community. The international community is very focused on cycles. It's very focused on plenary sessions and working group face-to-face meetings. And all that work's important, but it's actually the work and the preparation that leads up to that creates all of the value, and it creates the meetings that are successful. What I see today in conformity assessment, I'll speak in my area. In the world of conformity assessment, we have too small a group of active contributors. So what can the YEP program do to that? The YEP program and its people that are contributing as professionals can create an environment where that work is being done ahead of time. So I'll give you an example. I started in the forefront of the IEC conformity assessment systems. I was 30 years ago, actually November, we're getting close, but a few months from now, will be 30 years from when my organization issued its first ever IEC EE certificate. So if you look at it from that standpoint, people ask me about, well, how did I get started in this work? And what I try to tell them is that I spent 10 years kind of in the background, really focusing on understanding the fundamentals, understanding the rules and procedures, helping craft messaging, help craft creative ideas so that the people going to those working groups were very well prepared. Clearly, organizations have to be frugal with their expenses and they have to be careful on how they're applying their resources. But there's a lot of work that happens behind the scenes that's begging for support. There are a few people who go above and beyond the call of duty and are very active in many working groups, but where they can really be helped is there are many that come unprepared. There are many that come waiting for answers to be told to them. And I'm sure that what we're missing is that there's a whole army, so to say, of young professionals or emerging professionals that are eager to be part of that community, that are eager to be part of that voice. And I will tell you that for a number of years, I was fortunate to have people who went to working groups and committees that did reach out to people in the company. And so all that time that I spent within the company was well served in understanding what was going on, understanding the history on some subjects. And when it became my time in line, so to say, I was fortunate that those people, because they recognized that contribution, were willing to help me build a network to the people that I would now be working with. And so by sharing with them some of my contributions behind the scenes and in introducing me and engaging me with the professionals that I would now be working with in person, I felt that that was a very successful path forward. So on this question, what are the main challenges? I would say we have less and less active contributors within the conformity assessment community, working groups and plenaries. The number of resources are dwindling. And the way we can really help the community is we can help the community by making sure that the people you're linked to in your organizations, it could be at your local office, it could be at an international office, it really doesn't matter. But if you're linked to people who are at those sessions, reach out a hand behind the scenes, ask to participate and contribute. They're looking for help and support, and you have fresh energy and ideas. Use that as an onboarding ramp for yourself. I guess I'll close with saying when people ask me when they're starting out, they ask me, you know, what's the key that you have for me as a, you know, being someone that's being onboarded or on ramp to this community. And I would say that there's a few little things. The first thing, and they're not very difficult, they just take you wanting to do it. You likely have the skills to do it. The question is, will you decide to do it? The first thing is prepare for meetings. Read materials, read comments, prepare, be thoughtful in what you think is going to happen at the meeting, and try as much as possible to make the contributions of your organization targeted to your needs. Help focus them in a given channel. Second thing is raise your hand, raise your voice. And by both of those, a lot of people sit in a room thinking that there's someone else that's going to lead that conversation or drive that conversation. Sometimes it's a show of respect and professionalism for those that have been in front of you. That's fine, but I will tell you, as someone that's been involved for a long time, I don't care how old or what the person looks like across the table from me is. I always try to go into meetings thinking that someone else at the table knows more than me about that given subject, and we're going to collaborate on it. So if you have something to contribute, I want to hear your voice. I'm not going to judge you based on who you are. I'm going to judge you based on you being willing to provide and contribute. And if you're willing to raise your hand and you're willing to raise your voice, things happen. They magically happen. I never saw my career moving down a path of working with the FDA and being involved in the ASCA program. I never saw myself working with the international IMDRF on international medical regulations. If you ask my wife, who's a nurse, and my daughter, who's a physician assistant, they would both say, I'm the worst person to be talking about healthcare or medical. But it happens. I never saw a situation where I would be talking to trade negotiators on Brexit. There are things that happen in your career. There are paths that happen based on your contribution and your willingness to contribute. You have expertise. Let your expertise shine, and it will. Trust me, it will. So by doing just those simple things, prepare, be willing to speak and contribute, and be willing to not always be the person up front. Sometimes you have to help from behind. All of those things will create opportunities for you, and I'll look forward to seeing you actively contributing in circles that I participate in. Thank you.
We have one more comment that was submitted in the chat too. So we have Nathan Tom, who mentioned that the US YEP program could help with a digital hybrid transition that could improve access to a wider range of professionals that don't get that institutional support, as Eric had mentioned before. Nathan, if you wanted to elaborate on this, you're welcome to unmute yourself at this time.
I'm sure I don't have much more to add. Just, we are coming out of the pandemic, and that this is one of the first times that we're trying to host these hybrid events. And I think most of us on the YEPCOM think that this is the future, and just trying to get more feedback from the participants online and even those in person of how we can make these be basically as best as they can be. It's difficult. There's going to be some learning processes, but there's probably a lot of opportunities there that we can leverage if we try to get everyone's ideas of things we can try to get that engagement. It's easier for us to span across several time zones and states if we're allowed to have a hybrid environment to have these meetings, but we also want to make sure that we make them or design them in a way so that regardless of how you're participating, you find it valuable.
Great, thank you for that, Nathan. Absolutely agree. I think that will be key moving forward. And so if folks do have lessons learned they'd like to share, please do feel free to reach out to us. We'd really love to hear your thoughts on that. For now, we are going to take our 15-minute break. So I just want to thank everybody for your participation. Thank you for being here. And for our folks online, the Zoom will remain open, so you can just turn off your audio and video. For folks in the room, I think we have some cookies coming soon. So. All right, well, thank you everyone for your work during this first session. We had a great session in the room. We have our charts all filled out. And so what we're going to do now is bring our virtual and in-person sessions together. We have readouts from both sessions that we'll share. And then I think we're also going to bring the Jamboard up on the screen just so the folks in the room can see what happened online.
Sure, I can bring that up. Hold on one second.
Thanks, Ade. And I know that we have Eric doing a readout. So Eric, I'll invite you all to go first, kind of walk us through how your discussion went. And then we'll go through what we talked about here in the room.
Well, sure. Hi again, everybody. So yeah, we got a lot of cool sticky notes and hand-drawn stars to look at on the Jamboard. And there were a lot of things that we kind of covered. I think general themes with respect to our 2-year targets. One important one was a strategy for retaining members. In addition to that, we talked about a kind of increasing membership, but also like a pipeline and being able to show different pathways to either USNC management committees or wherever an emerging professional goals may be, then just kind of being able to provide a support system there. Strengthening partnerships with other professional societies was one that kind of was a general theme that came up when we were in a number of these hosting trainings, workshops, and being able to share best practices and highlight YEPs for their achievements in their industries, to maybe provide a support system there and maybe more of a bargaining chip where, you know, you're able to show you're actually doing something and being a productive member of this standards work. Develop a social media presence was one that was popular, and that's something the YEP committee could certainly do, or the YEP program specifically. And yeah, I think that's most of what we're talking about here, but also beginning to integrate with universities. Some of this came up in the chat, and other ideas for adding things to curriculum, stuff like that. So this is some common themes that show up later as well. So this is our 2-year start. I don't know if you want me to read out for all of them, or if you want to go one by one with respect to what the in-person group did.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. Why don't we can go each year by year. So I'll do a quick readout from what we talked about during our 2 years. But we were just noting that developing a social media presence is, once it's on the screen, I'm like, well, of course we should do that. So that's something I think that's an action we can take really soon. So thank you so much for that readout. I think we had some pretty similar themes, but some other things that we also saw here in the room is I think we have we're practicing right now, but we have some lesson learning that we can do in terms of hosting vibrant hybrid events. I think as we move kind of back into the in-person, what Nathan brought up earlier about ensuring that folks from different places and different time zones with different budgets, things like that, are able to participate. We'll really need to work on that. And so continue thinking about how to make these hybrid events as successful as possible. The other theme that really came up a lot in our 2-year sticky note area was about partnerships, how we can work with other organizations to really achieve our goals. And so some specific ones that came up were SES. We could partner with them to do some trainings. Partnering or continuing to partner with other USNC committees certainly is of interest. And then somebody had an idea to partner with standards development organizations, and if we could get them to work with us as soon as they bring somebody new onto their team, and if we could be kind of part of their onboarding process, that could be a really impactful way to get new people involved, especially if we can kind of institutionalize it with partnerships in different organizations. Yeah, I'll pause there. So that's what we saw kind of in our 2-year. I'll pass it back to you, Eric, to hear more about 5 years.
Yeah, let's do it. So yeah, a few common themes that kind of popped up in our working session was outreach and education to undergrad students. So partnerships, integrating into the curriculum, maybe with student groups, things like that. Diversity is a common theme throughout all of the membership stickies. So I think continued increase in diversity of not just background, but also professional backgrounds and industries. So we're representative of the USNC as a whole, and also, you know, us as a society. Trying to increase YEP participation with IEC TCs or USNC tags. And, there are some numbers thrown about in some of these tags with respect to kind of slap a number on it. So I think US tags, IEC TCs or US tags increased participation by 20% and things like that. So I think that's a common want with respect to 5 years. And then again, partnering with international YEP programs to maybe collaborate on events, talk about what works, what doesn't work, information sharing, stuff like that. So those are all the main themes that came through on our Jamboard session there. And sorry, and then one for outreach is trying to set up a scholarship or some kind of scholarship program to help fund participation of professionals for technical committees. That's an important one that I think would be helpful going forward.
Wow, awesome. Yeah, that's fabulous. Thank you, everyone. We had a couple kind of similar things. One thing that did come up was related to what you said about increasing participation by 20%. I think in general, coming up with metrics, how we're going to measure our success will be really helpful in figuring out if we're actually meeting our goals. So that was a conversation that we had as well. And then as well as the scholarships or sponsorships to support travel. I think both to the YEP program, we were lamenting that we weren't able to get everybody here in the room today. So if we could figure out some way to deal with that, that would be awesome. So that certainly came up, as well as the curriculum. I think that's a really strong interest in education committee here in the room. So we can talk a little bit more about that during our next session, I think, as well. Beyond that, we talked about really establishing a clear path for participation when we get somebody new into our group. What are their next steps? How can we make sure that we're getting them the support that they need? And and then really just working again with the partnerships, looking to academia and figuring out how we can get some of that curriculum development was a theme that we saw in pretty much all these timescales. Okay, on to 10 years.
And we are getting additional stickies kind of popping up as ideas come through. So it would be worth revisiting the Jamboard after our session to kind of combine all the feedback. That would be useful. But for 10 years, it gets a little more sparse because naturally it's harder to think this far ahead. So I think an increase with respect to dedicated slots for YEPs on US tags potentially down the road and increasing participation that way to kind of provide fresh ideas and also integrate younger or emerging folks in this space to ensure kind of continued participation and professional development. Establishing regional chapters of the YEP program, which could improve local networking opportunities. And that came up a couple of times. And then also contributing towards younger and younger folks. So K through 12 education, introducing standards in a really basic way and how it can affect everyday life, and basically just planting a seed for something that could grow down the road as younger folks approach the workforce or professional careers or even university, and learning more about how standards work. And that also came up here.
Awesome. Yeah, we had a lot of similar thoughts, particularly with respect to the curriculum building. And another idea that came up was kind of establishing a feedback loop as people go through and they progress through the program, and maybe they start as a young or an emerging, and then kind of when they're out of that stage, kind of entering into the seasoned part of their career, how can we make sure that we still keep those folks in the fold and still continue to learn lessons from their experience? And so we kind of quickly discussed maybe there's some sort of reoccurring survey or some other way that we can collect that information and make sure that we're always sort of incorporating an iterative process in building our program and making sure that the evolving needs can continue to be met and that we kind of have an understanding of what those things are. But otherwise we had very similar stickies for our 10 years. So let's go on to 10 plus.
10 plus. Yeah, I guess great minds think alike. We're coming up with the same idea as a group. So for 10 plus years, there's some lofty goals on here where we're basically saying, okay, reach a point where everybody knows what standards are and conformity assessment is. So it's more common knowledge, even to unaffiliated parties. And that could be something that applies to a variety of age ranges, obviously, and sectors. Again, dedicating slots for IEC TCs for YEPs, potentially, then obviously not restricted to USNC YEPs, but potentially some slots for the international community. Diversity is up here again, continuing the support and adapting strategic goals as needed as the membership grows and diversifies, and trying to be a household name in general for all standards communities, so everybody knows what the young professional or young emerging professional program is. And those were the main concepts we brought up on 10+ years.
I was laughing as you said that because I think on the 10+ years, somebody wrote, nobody asks what standards are anymore. 'Cause I think everybody in this room and online probably has at least once been asked. I know my parents are like, wait, what is this? So if they just knew, because we did such a good job, that would be a wonderful accomplishment. A couple other notes that we had, we would love to see a global YEP exchange program. And we were talking kind of towards the end, maybe that could even have different tracks. So you have a track where you go do an exchange program with somebody in your industry. So it sort of has a dual purpose in learning about their standards and conformity assessment activities, but you also can bring some value back to your organization. Maybe there's like a programmatic track where you can go understand how they're supporting their YEPs and what lessons we can bring back and what lessons we can share. Lots of opportunity there. So that I know that's come up a couple of times every time we talk about this. That exchange program is really of interest. So we'd love to kind of explore what that could look like. And then, the last one we have is active participation in all technical committees. We have US participation across all the committees. Ideally, maybe there are people that have gone through the YEP or the YEP has supported them to get there somehow. And it's a bright future ahead. So we are a little bit over time, but I do actually want to open up the floor and just see if we can get some feedback now that we were able to bring both of these sessions together. If folks have thoughts or things that they saw that they maybe hadn't considered, I'd love to kind of hear what everybody's thinking. So folks in the room, please just raise your hand and make sure that you say your name before you contribute your thought. And then online, just use the raise hand function and we'll kind of switch between the two.
Hi, this is Rachel Brooker. As Carrie had stated, I'm the chair of the Committee on Education. And so it was really important for me to be down here because of the work that you guys are doing and how we can tie that in and how the COE can help you and how you can help the COE at the same time. So we are doing several different programs. We are starting a collaboration with SES on a buddy program. It's not really a mentorship, it's just connecting a YEP to a seasoned professional, and that way we get some networking in there. But I would love to see a lot more interaction between your members and what your program is and ours, so that we can do that. We can start to reach them at the college level. And we do a paper program as well as a standard simulation, and we can start to really co-advertise between our groups. I really would like to get going on that. So please let me know. Unfortunately, I have to catch a flight in a half an hour. I have to leave. But I would love to sit down even more and talk with you about how we can help and get you in contact with a lot more of the academic institutions, because that's a large part of our membership, are academic institutions. So we can get you guys working in there and get them even before they become YEPs. I guess technically they'd be emerging, but I think I put it in there something about, at the graduation level, that people already know who YEP is at the graduation level. So.
Great. And I see that we have a hand up online from Amanda Johnson. Amanda?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep.
Perfect. So one thing that came up during our discussion online was the kind of roadmap of, okay, now that you're a young professional or you're in this YEP program, what do you want to do within the USNC or within the IEC? So I'm part of the mentoring program, and those are conversations I've had with my mentor. But if the YEP committee could kind of put stuff together and help its members see what they can do within USNC IEC. I think that would really give us kind of a good way to retain people and keep people kind of flowing through the pipeline of this work. Thank you.
Thanks, Amanda. Yeah, that's a wonderful idea. Earlier during our discussion, I wrote down toolkit, which I think is kind of the same thing that we're talking about. Like, okay, somebody joined, that's great. We're really excited to have them, but now what? Where do they go? How can we support them? What do they need? And so I think you hit the nail right on the head. That's a huge need, and I think something we can really start working on in the near term. So thank you. I really agree with that.
So just to sort of piggyback off that, this is something we've talked about a few times in the committee itself. Is there an appetite out there, especially for the people online, the participants, for assistance with creating a value proposition sheet so that when you're going to your boss or who's ever holding the purse strings, so that you have all the answers to all the questions you're going to get as to why you should be participating in standards and conformity assessment, how much it's going to cost, how much bandwidth it's going to take, and what value it's going to create for your organization. Is there an appetite for that? Is that a project we should undertake?
If that's of interest, go ahead and use the raise hand function, and then Ade, if you could just report back to us how many folks have raised their hand.
Sorry, this is Rachel again. To build off of that, not from the COE side, but from my standards development side. And I know we want it in the curriculum, but even just a certificate to say that I've been a YEP for 1 year membership. I cannot tell you how many people, when they're involved in standards development, that ask at the end of this, can I get a certificate to take to my boss that says I was part of this standard development? So don't underestimate the power of just that certificate to say, I was a YEP for 1 year or 2 years, I think that could be something that would be a value add to keep the membership so they can take that to their boss.
And I'm seeing a handful of hands here online, so I definitely think that would be something worth looking into, Wally, value participation, one-pager flyer.
Great, thank you, Ade, and thanks folks for participating. Sonia, did you have a comment?
Yeah, thank you, Carrie. Sonia Bird, Underwriters Laboratories and Vice President Technical of the USNC and the US rep to the IEC SMB. And apologies for coming in late, but this is a great discussion. Eric mentioned something about having dedicated slots for YEPs within the IEC, not just within tags themselves. And I know that has begun a little bit. I know there's an IEC board task force on SDGs, and there was a dedicated slot included in that for a YEP. And I think that's working very well. There's someone involved from Mexico on that board task force with me, and she actually contributes quite a bit. But I think what I heard from the suggestion when we look at 10 plus years is maybe having assigned spots on some of the other groups within IEC, such as the SMB, such as the CAB, some of these more high-level management boards. And that to me, I don't know if that was the intent of Eric's comment, but that's how I took it in my head.
Thanks, Sonia. Yeah, Steve.
Hopefully to stimulate a little more conversation and maybe get some more people engaged. I guess I see this twofold, and I'm not sure everyone on the line does. I'd be very interested to hear on their perspectives because, as a person that's been around for a while, I know I make some assumptions of where this might be going, and I don't want to be making assumptions. I'd like to make sure that I'm fulfilling any kind of interest that the group has. But I kind of see this I see twofold. One is I see it as an opportunity for career development, and we've spoke a lot about that. But as a guy in conformity assessment, I also see it as really helping to build our field. And when I say field, I say standards and conformity assessment, reminding everyone that the only purpose to write a standard is to facilitate trade and ensure that it can be used and applied using conformity assessment methods, first, second, or third party. If you're not sure what that is, that's an example of where we can start the conversation. But I think some of the conversation we just had about how are we going to get the companies to support and maybe support travel, or at least time and resource to contribute and participate. The one thing that I think we're missing in the conversation is that, I mean, I may be biased in calling it conformity assessment, but I think we're missing the follow the dollars. Follow the dollars means, how is your business doing? How are things being commercialized? How are you bringing products to market? How are you facilitating trade? All of those are really key factors. And if you're talking to your directors and vice presidents, that's going to resonate with them. And so, you know, we're talking about a lot of things from the perspective of professional development. I think we need to couple that professional development aspect with the business development aspect. And the business development is, how is your participation in learning about standards and conformity assessment going to support the business's needs to bring products to market, whatever industry you may be in, or whatever place in that realm of conformity assessment or bringing products to market you may be in. So I think that's something for everyone to think about. Having that conversation with, you know, me being able to understand and know that there's a new technology coming out or a new requirement that could impact your ability to put products on market. That's a very powerful message to give to organizations. Knowing that a regulation is changing that's at an very early developmental stage is market intelligence that's very critical to organizations. So I would just suggest to the group, or at least provide the feedback, not to lose sight that there's two sides to this coin, and the side to the coin about professional development is very important. And I think that's probably what brings many people to this group. Keep in mind the other side of the coin, because the other side of the coin is what's going to let the organization say, yeah, we stand behind you and we support you in these efforts. So that would be I'd be curious for some of the people on the line. I'd be curious to hear what their thoughts are, if that resonates, or what their thoughts are.
And Steve, I'm seeing a couple of folks online who agree with some of your comments. And I also want to add that we had a few comments come through agreeing with the YEP program certificate. So another great idea. If anyone would like to elaborate on their comments, please raise your hand and unmute yourself. All right, not seeing any hands raised, but there were some comments agreeing with your input, Steve. So thank you.
Great, thank you. Well, I think that was a really nice segue to our second working session, which we're a little over time, but I thought I didn't want to cut off this excellent conversation. So we'll take just a slightly shorter time to discuss our second question. We're going to use the same format that we did for the first working session, where in-person folks will work with pen and paper, and our virtual folks will work on the virtual version of that. The second question is, how do we engage with the standards and conformity assessment organizations to support opportunities for YEPs? And there's a lot of different directions that you can take that. So any kind of answer to that question is welcome. Let's take the next 35 minutes to think and discuss this question, and then we'll come back at 10 till, and we'll each share our top 3 points, just because I do want to make sure we end on time. What? Oh, what time? Oh, sorry, did I do the math wrong? Oh, I did. Yeah, okay, sorry. I meant 25. Thanks, Wally. So we'll take 25 minutes to work on this, and then we'll use those last 10 to go for, talk about what each group discussed. So we'll take our top 3 points, and then we will end at 4 Eastern. So let's go into our breakouts again, and we'll reconvene in 25 minutes.
Okay, it sounds like the two groups, both virtual and in person, have been reconnected. Is that right? Tech team or folks in the room? Okay, I see a comment that we're 1 minute out. Great, thank you.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back. We are at the end of our second working session, and so now we're going to move into sort of our wrap up for both the second virtual session as well as any other thoughts that folks want to share after having attended the day today. So I'd love to do what we did for the first working session and turn it over to our virtual group and hear what you all talked about for our second question.
Absolutely, thanks, Carrie. Hold on one moment while I share the Jamboard screen again. All right. Can you all see that?
Yes.
Great, thank you. And I think Sam Lum on the line, who is the secretary of the committee, will provide a summary of the input that we received virtually.
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, I'll try to keep it nice and concise for time. So kind of going off of this, we've nicely organized into different categories here. So firstly, trying to think about engagement. Is there a way we could develop like a statement? So up on the top left, MOU or memorandum, at least to have a basic kind of framework for sharing resources. Document and list existing opportunities. So another is to list existing and new opportunities for YEP. Perhaps communication of opportunities. So is not sufficient. To use existing networks and to start and continue conversations about young YEP and as well opportunities. So a lot of ways to kind of document our involvement and future opportunities. Coming down, maybe one of those ways is through a weekly email or newsletters. We could obviously engage with to other SDOs with cold calling kind of thing, to make sure we continue to use lessons learned from other YEP programs internationally on engagement and opportunities. And of course, that includes, like someone mentioned earlier, like a exchange kind of program. Certainly include YEP in, one of the thoughts is to include YEP in all bilateral and outreach meetings with member organizations. Coming over to the right side, not only do we need to continue to ensure that YEPs are active and be able to demonstrate the knowledge that they gained in order to think about how to justify experiences, some sort of incentive program, perhaps a discount on fees to like ANSI, to showcase how other organizations are benefiting from the involvement of young and emerging professionals. Trying to have, as we talked about, making sure that we have a role for YEP to perhaps have a conformity assessment chair in the YEP committee. Certainly continuing to highlight our members in the USNC Current or any other kind of forum that USNC sponsors, such as webinars and etc. And lastly, we had a comment from ASTM, Katarina, who manages the ASTM Emerging Professionals Program. She said that she's interested in partnering up if there's anything that any kind of overlapping committees that would benefit. And I think one last one I missed was polling. So making sure, seeing how we can capture more of the standards and conformity assessment space by polling them on how we're perceived and where those opportunities are.
Wow, thank you, Sam. Thank you for that. What a wonderful conversation you all had online. So that's fabulous. I can't wait to spend a little more time with this Jamboard and read everything that you all put up there. I'll just quickly go through the takeaways that we had from our session in the room, and then we'll go ahead and wrap up. So we have three kind of key takeaways. The first was outreach, coming up with webinars and other material that can really help organizations understand the value of having their employees involved in standards and conformity assessment. Certainly has a lot of interest here. And these are all pretty related, but the second one is value proposition for companies. And so we kind of talked about flipping the script a little bit. What does it mean? We talk a lot about like, how can the YEPs go to their supervisors and say, here's the value of me participating, kind of ask to, work and travel and go to some of these YEP events and other related activities. If we flip that a little bit and ask, how can we show companies what the value proposition is, or how can we add value to their work? And so some ideas that came up with that are perhaps the YEP program, and we could do some partnerships to make this really robust, is perhaps we could provide some training or become part of different organizations' onboarding process. They could kind of outsource to us, and we could help get their new hires up to speed with some of the activities that we're working on. So that was one of the ideas there. But then the ultimate goal, and I think something that is really going to be important for us to keep in mind going forward, is talking about and thinking about how we can create self-sustaining value. And so what that means is, going into the future, this is kind of in the 10 plus category, I think, but if we can build the foundation where the value for participating, from an individual standpoint, as well as participation from an organizational standpoint, is really clear, we don't have to keep reiterating it. And we can just make sure that value is really self-sustaining. And so one of the conversations we had was, if we think about like an engineer, when you have engineers on your team, they have continuing learning credits, their value is really clear. It's sort of obvious why you'd want to have an engineer on your team. If we could get to the point where that's clear for somebody that's well-versed in standards and conformity assessment, then I think we've certainly been successful. And so kind of, thinking with that goal in mind, how do we get there and what does that look like? And then the last idea that I'll share before closing us out was perhaps we could give out awards to different organizations that are really supportive of their YEPs and supportive of standards and conformity assessment participation. And then that would be kind of a way for the company to attract new people to say, hey, we really support our employees. We really want them to grow professionally. And here's a really concrete way we did it. In fact, we're so good, we got an award. So that was just another one of the ideas that came up in our session. But I know we only have a couple minutes, so we're gonna have to call it a day. So I just wanted to give a huge thank you to everybody. Thank you to the folks in the room. Thank you to everybody that attended online, and to our facilitators, Ade and Megan, I really appreciate it. Thank you for Wally and Carolyn for joining us. And thank you, of course, to this fabulous tech team back here. They've made this daunting hybrid event totally seamless. So just want to give a big thank you to them. And with that, I will remind everybody that if any questions or other thoughts come up, to please reach out to Ade, Megan, or myself. We're always happy to chat. And from there, we'll just look forward to seeing you either in person or online the next time. So thank you.
Quick question while they're still online, and I know Ade and Megan are great at taking notes. So I assume there'll be some output from this with some specific, what I'd really like to see is some action items. That way, the next time the group gets together, we can follow up on those action items, because I always like to say, who's going to do what by when? And I really think that's a great follow-up, because there's really been some great discussion today. And it's, again, I'm excited for the group. Thanks.
Thanks, Kevin. Yeah, we will definitely spend some time looking at all the notes that we had in person, online, and coming up with that list and making sure that everybody that's interested can be kept in the loop. Thank you. Okay, with that, we will thank you once again, and we'll look forward to talking to you soon.